Welcome back to Earth Tones. Happy Earth Tone Tuesday, everyone. I'm so grateful to have you all here today, and I'm also equally grateful for the story that has us all gathered together today. This story is going to be a little bit of a different path to last week's episode. But the strength and the resilience and the undertone is the exact same. And that is what I hope to continue to cultivate for my audience each week, so that I can really help each of us to see that we are all going through our own oppositions in life, but that the theme is the same, that we are all able to get through whatever it is that we are navigating. So today's episode is about a man that if you met him, you would think, wow, that's the happiest guy in the world. Man, that dude's got energy. Like that guy's got a big love for God. That guy has his head screwed on right. He's so generous. He's always giving back to the community. Like, I didn't know that there were people that nice that even existed anymore. Like, just good vibes all the time with this person. And you would never guess that he spent 16 years in prison for something that he says he didn't do. You just never guess it. Before we get into this story, I did want to give a picture of the world that he walked into when the prison doors closed behind him. So, as one of the most recent nationwide counts that I pulled from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 1.25 million people are currently incarcerated in either state or federal prisons across the United States. But if you are including local jails and other facilities, the total does climb to nearly 2 million. And inside of prisons, as I'm sure we can all imagine, very regimented with schedules and controlled movements and set meal times and sleep schedules and just that constant undercurrent of tension. Um, I did want to look into like what the vibe is with religion in prisons and, what's offered, as I don't know. And I did find that there are chapels, there are Bible studies, there are volunteer ministries that are offered, but they're not always equally available, just depending on the facility itself, just depending on the inmates, as I said, the head counts, the access can be limited. The different types of security levels are limited. And so, someone who is in maximum security, which we will get to that point shortly, those opportunities for fellowship look different to maybe somebody who is not under that maximum security. So keep that in mind. I do find this story remarkable because, when you can say that you've been through something to this degree and that your faith was untouched is just such a testimony. And yeah, and I'm sure that there were moments in those 16 years that he did go through it and he did have challenges with his faith, but to be able to go into such an intensive incubator of heightened pressure and be able to continue to come out the other end with an even greater faith and love in God and gratitude versus, turning sour, turning mad at the world. This was a waste of my time. I can't believe that I had to go through this. I'm entitled to have the best life ever. I'm entitled to make up the last 16 years. Those are attitudes that I would assume would be very predictable for somebody coming out of prison. But this tone of my friend's story is something that I have never heard before, which is, that he was just anchored in God. He just allowed life to happen to him, and he was anchored in God, and he let himself feel and heal while in prison. And today he is, like I said, just a wonderful person to be around. So let's get into the questions that I interviewed him with. And also keep in mind that I wanted, for his privacy, and for, privacy in general, I just wanted to keep this anonymous to protect him. So I wanted to know his first week of being inside prison, like, what was that like for you? And he said that during that first week, all he felt was a constant state of shock, fear, numbness, everything hitting him all at once, the loss, the isolation, the unknown. His instincts did tell him to survive and to stay guarded and to not let anything break him. So, in fact, that train of thought did end up getting him into maximum security, where he was locked down for 23 hours a day for an entire year. I cannot even imagine. But slowly he did begin to realize that surviving wasn't enough and that he did have to find his purpose again, or he would lose himself in that dark place. He says that purpose became his lifeline, and that is where his intimate relationship with Jesus Christ started. And I think that that's a good place to actually put a pin in it, right? Is like we all feel close to God, but it's not until you get to those breaking points in your life where you really get intimate with God. And that's something that you can't really explain to somebody until they go through that high, intensive, pressured moment in their life, right? Is just that intimacy. And it's such a sacred thing that it's almost hard to even express to somebody because it's just so raw and real for you and in your experience. Um, so I asked him about the moment that he prayed to God to not let him fold and just what that story really meant. He said that when he dropped to his knees in his cell, he was the rawest version of himself that he'd ever felt. He cried out to God to not allow him to become bitter as a result of what was happening to himself. He held on to the prayer by repeating it often, sometimes hourly. When things got dark, he would remember that he did not make it this far alone, that his faith in God became a discipline, something that he chose, not just something that he felt. I asked him how he protected his spirit from some of the weight in prison. And he said that it was a process. He had to learn how to protect his spirit by feeding it daily with prayer, reading, exercising, and positive self affirmation. And that he did come close to giving up many times. But nevertheless, his relationship with Christ was so real and also real enough to give him the courage and strength to hold on. And I just love that, right? Like, yes, our realities are real. Our realities are what we understand to be our truest form of life experience through the lens of ourselves, through the lens of our traumas, through the lens of our hurts, our pains, our triggers, right? And someone sitting next to us, maybe like a twin sister, could have a fully different perception of life because of the same thing on her end. And so, yes, we have our own realities, but also, yes, that God also has been there with us, holding us through all of those realities as well. And so I love that he says, not only was my life real, but my relationship with Christ was also real. I love that. So one night he witnessed something that changed his perspective forever. And he says, one night I watched a young man break down after getting a life sentence. He looked just like me when I came in. I realized this cycle doesn't stop unless somebody changes it. That was my turning point. I stopped focusing just on my own pain and thinking about impact. I asked him about the role that forgiveness played in his healing. And he said forgiveness was everything. I had to forgive the system, even though it hurt me, not because I deserved it, or sorry, not because the system deserved it, but because I did. Carrying that bitterness would have poisoned me. I also had to forgive my accusers, my old brother, my ex-wife. Healing came when I stopped looking for justice outside and just started creating peace inside. I asked about his ministry, Backbone, and whether that was born in prison or after his release. Backbone was born in the fire of the prison. The name came to me while I was fasting because I was ready to give up, and God had my back, and He showed me just how He was going to use what the devil meant for my destruction to bless others. And you can look into Backbone, but it is a wonderful program that infuses sports and agility and training with God-led purpose and awareness to serve others and to cheer on your fellow teammates. And, it creates this beautiful way to mesh internal and external. And so he's got some wonderful workbooks that go with his program. And so, as you're breaking down, like, let's say the word trust, or let's say the word discipline, which are words that are used in sports, you're getting to that deeper root of why we trust and why we need discipline. And it's very special the way that he's tied sports back into God, and that is his role now in the world and within the community. So I asked him what he wants young people to know about choices, resiliency, and identity. And he said, every choice matters. Your identity is only found in Christ through relationship. You are not what the world says you are. It is what God says you are that matters forever. So as we ended, he left me with this: purpose can grow out of pain. God doesn't make mistakes, and nothing is wasted when you choose to grow. No matter where you are, what you've done or haven't done, there is still a time to become the person you were created to be. Hold on to that truth, and it will carry you through anything. His story is a living reminder that no wall, no sentence, no cell can keep God from working in our lives. Colossians 3:13 says, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. And maybe the greatest takeaway is this: faith isn't just about what happens when life is easy. It is about what holds you together when everything else falls apart. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you were able to take something and integrate into your life. And if you have a story that you feel could be shared that is similar, that is inspirational, that has taken you from somewhere dark to somewhere light, I would love to hear it. So I will always be linking my Instagram and my TikTok and all of the things in the show notes. But through my Instagram links, there is a submission form, an intake form where you can put in your own story. And I do review those frequently to look for potential guests to be on the podcast. And like I said, I would love to do anonymous, stories like this. I would love to release intimate one-on-one episodes. I would love to release poetry, any type of art that you have created that helps you speak to your voice, to your pain, to your purpose. I would love to share that with the world. So definitely reach out to me, or look where you need to get to the links. And thank you so much for listening today, and thank you for continuing to stick with me through these as I'm just learning how to video and record the audio and mesh all the things and do it all. I'm so grateful for everyone who's been supporting me, and I'm excited for next week's Earth Tones. Have a blessed week, everyone.